The upper 20% of the CIA does not believe in democracy. They believe in the perpetuation and the power of the CIA. We are talking a monster here with multiple tentacles.
You had said, I make a distinction between the shadow government and the deep state. Could you explain the difference between those two?
The shadow government, I consider, is the CIA. It manipulates Congress, it manipulates the judiciary, and the White House. The deep state is this multi-billion-dollar monster like the Department of State, designed to influence congressional and senator representatives, influence their reelection. You got this entire huge monster that's got to be dismantled. The biggest and most important effort in U.S. history.
Let's say you got a phone call from Mar-a-Lago and they said, Kevin, we need you down here to brief the president. What would you tell him?
Be very careful with the CIA. They're going to have to clean the upper levels of the CIA first and put people that are in line with the change and the reform that the CIA desperately needs.
What makes you think Trump can pull it off?
He cannot be controlled by them. That's why they've been trying so hard to stop him and remove him.
Are you worried about his safety?
Yes, and Bobby Kennedy too. Based on the history of what I've seen in the CIA, they will try to get rid of them because the CIA knows it could be their demise. So they're under serious threat.
Congratulations on the book. It's called Twilight of the Shadow Government, How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State.
It was a bestseller on Amazon, sold out. But that's not why I wrote the book. I wrote the book to get this truth out there to the American people. They take my royalties, fine. I made all these decisions ahead of time. I don't care what they try to do to me. It's too late. The entire world knows what they did. I'm at peace and happy about that.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
Hi, it's Brian Rose from London Real. You probably know that we've just recently been re-platformed on YouTube after 25 months completely in the dark. The truth is, I really need your help. What I really need you to do is click on that subscribe button right now, like this video, and maybe even leave a comment or share the link with friends. We're really fighting against an algorithm that's tried to keep us quiet for so long. And the more subscribers we have, the more people watch our content, the better guests we can bring you, the better content, and we can continue transforming lives. We've been doing this for 14 years now. I want to do this for another 14 years, but I really need your help. So click on that subscribe button, like the video, leave a comment, share this, and we're going to continue to bring you more and more great content. Thank you. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Kevin Shipp, the former CIA officer, anti-terrorism expert, and author. You spent 17 years in the CIA, holding high-profile positions across all 4 divisions of the agency, receiving 3 Exceptional Performance Awards and a medallion for overseas covert operations. In 2011, you turned whistleblower to expose the CIA's abuse of the state secrets privilege. Your new book, Twilight of the Shadow Government, How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State, looks at how the agency has strayed from its original mission to provide accurate intelligence to the American president. The book also exposes how the CIA exerts massive unchecked control through secret alliances with Wall Street, big media, the drug trade, and even the blackmail of senior political leaders. Kevin, welcome to London Real.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Kevin, great to have you here. I just wanted to cut straight to it. Let's say you got a phone call, right after this episode from Mar-a-Lago, and they said, Kevin, we need you down here to brief the president. and they pull you into his office and you got 20 minutes one-on-one with him. Maybe Elon's there too. And he says, look, Kevin, you got 20 minutes. What do I need to know when I go in there based on everything you know? What are my blind spots? What is the 1 or 2 or 3 things that I need to have an eye out so I can get what I need to get done in the next 4 years? What would you tell him?
Well, yeah, he and John Ratcliffe, who he's appointed, and I think a good one, appointed to be director of the CIA. First of all, I would say you have to understand that the upper 20% of the CIA does not believe in democracy, and they believe in the perpetuation and the power of the CIA. And even Mike Pompeo, when he came out, said that himself. So I would say be very careful with the CIA. And when Ratcliffe gets in there, I'd ask the president to give him all the support that he needs and have his back, because there are going to be some people on the upper floors that are going to have their knives out, and they're very slick how they do it, and they're going to try to eradicate Ratcliffe and resist everything that Trump does, unless Trump makes sure that Ratcliffe appoints a proper deputy director of the CIA, one from the outside. Their chief operating officer needs to be replaced so that they don't control or make the bureaucracy, the CIA bureaucracy, work against them. They're going to have to clean house at the upper levels of the CIA first, and put people that are in line with the change in the reform that the CIA desperately needs. It has been conducting covert operations since under the National Security Act of 1947. And it has been running bloody covert operations and coups, sometimes without the president's knowledge, many operations without the president's knowledge or Congress. And that needs to be stopped. And the covert operational authority of the CIA needs to be removed. And the CIA needs to be just reformed back to what Truman intended. I've been having conversations back and forth with Bobby Kennedy Jr., who agrees with me 100% that that's the first approach to take.
Yes, I had Bobby on the show in 2020 when everything was kicking off with COVID and lockdown. And I still remember my conversation with Bobby because I was ready to get the vaccine. And I got a degree from MIT, which I don't think helps me because I think I was blinded by the science a little bit, Kevin. And so he walked me through everything from the 1986 Act that removed the liability. And I was struck by this man with obviously a legendary family name, but who at the same time was extremely intelligent. And at the end of that, he pretty much convinced me not to do this. This was, by the way, in May of 2020. And I further had him back on when he published his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, and then to watch everything that's happened in the last year or so. I mean, it's like a superhero's Avenger movie, really. And maybe even proof we're in a simulation here, this dream team that's been exposed. But I know Bobby likes to quote, I think, JFK, who I believe said that that agent should be scattered into a million pieces. I believe that's what he said after the Bay of Pigs and the pressure that he got. Am I quoting that right? And does Bobby really feel that way because of his uncle's really vehemence for that agency?
Absolutely. He feels that way 100%. And so do I. I wrote a section for his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, especially about the CIA's role in the COVID propaganda and lockdowns, which were developed by the CIA at Johns Hopkins University, ready to be rolled out. And when COVID hit, the CIA, along with Fossey and others, rolled out that censorship propaganda program that was already developed. Bobby and I, this is how we became friends. We're both on the same page about eliminating the covert operational authority of the CIA, and we're both convinced, I am, certainly he is 100%, that the CIA was certainly involved in the assassination of his uncle JFK. And there are some very odd facts about the death of his own father. And there was a cover up there because there was a second shooter. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm an investigator. I used to teach criminal investigations. And if you do a real criminal investigation on the Bobby Kennedy Sr. murder, you'll find that there's 2 shooters.
Yeah, I know there was 8 bullets from a gun with 6. And there's a lot of big questions there. And when it comes to censorship, we can definitely talk about it later. We really felt the brunt of that during COVID. And on April 6, 2020, we actually had the second largest YouTube live stream in the world talking about masks and distancing and vaccines. And 30 minutes later, that video was deleted and banned for the first time in my 9-year broadcast history. Right. And Kevin, I was shocked. I was shocked. I was a partner at YouTube. I had all that. And we went down a pretty dark road. We made a whole movie about this called We Will Not Be Silenced that talks about what happened. And later I got to meet Mike Benz, and he kind of explained some of the things behind the scene that was going on with the government. But Kevin, I didn't get that it was the government. I thought it was YouTube. And I remember people trying to say that Alphabet has investments in the vaccine companies, and it never really made sense to me. But of course, later with Twitter files and then with people like you out there, we could see that there's probably a lot of the people in the government that were doing that. Look, I'd love to talk about that, but with Trump, I don't know much about the CIA, but obviously you've got a bunch of professionals whose job it is to do things covertly, to play with people's minds, to get people to think one thing is happening when in fact something else is happening. When you go into a place like that, it just seems like the most impossible place to try to clean up, get straight answers, find out what's going on, because you're dealing with seems like a bunch of shapeshifters. Is that what it's like, or is that not what it's like? And can Trump really get stuff done in there, do you think?
That is what it's like. And, the CIA, the entire organization, its whole mission is deception, propaganda, covert operations, and coups. And I think the CIA has been responsible for the death of some 7 million people. When I got in there and went into operations collecting human intelligence overseas on behalf of the Counterterrorism Center, I saw the ugly way that the CIA does things. There is no morality in the CIA, and I think people probably know that. If they don't, they need to. There is no morality in the CIA. Human life is cheap. They don't care about that. They care about the perpetuation of the global juggernaut that is the CIA. So to stand up internally and try to do something about that, I suppose I'm probably a good example of that. They will come after you with a vengeance. Fortunately, I was trained by them. I was them. So I was 2 steps ahead every time. But they really tried to erase me. And that of course, is the subject of the book, one of the chapters. So no, inside, it's full of, I had a buddy who was a case officer, and he got out and we were talking, and I said, yeah, some of these guys in the field, especially at the management level, are snakes. And he wrote back and said, you got that totally wrong. I said, what do you mean? He goes, to call them a snake is a compliment. They're lower than that. So it's pretty bad. Now, I have to say this, too. I'm talking about the 20% upper in the upper covert levels of the CIA, the ones that run the covert operations from the director down to the director of operations. The other 80% of the CIA are good, hard-working Americans, patriotic Americans that love their country, and they're working to provide for their families, and they're good people. They have no idea what's going on in the upper levels.
And so Ratcliffe's going in. Your advice to Trump is to support him, help him get a good deputy, clean house. That's the advice.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I sent this to Bobby Kennedy, and he agreed. And I understand that my recommendations have gone to the administration, humbly. The first thing is the National Security Act of 1947 broadly gave the CIA the authority to conduct covert operations and without any restrictions. And then the National Security Council National Security Council Directive 10-2 in 1948 allowed the CIA to engage in any covert operations as long as the government could engage in what is still called plausible denial. The U.S. government could deny that they had anything to do with it. So they gave the CIA unlimited power for propaganda, economic warfare, sabotage, subversion, and of course penetration of the news media. And the CIA, with a secret budget of now billions, ran with that and really became its own government. That's why I call it the shadow government. It has become its own government, and it's manipulating our elected government. So the National Security Act of 1947 needs to be rewritten and eliminate the covert authority of the CIA. The National Security Council Directive 10-2 needs to also be written and remove the covert operational authority of the CIA. You do those two, excuse me. He engages in those two, and he's cut the head off the viper totally. And based on the input I've gotten back, they're taking that into consideration.
Kevin, is there any downside to doing that?
Well, we have to make sure, we have enemies overseas in countries that want to destroy our democracy and our way of life. That's just a fact. I was out there in areas where there were terrorists and a lot of anti-American sentiment, and they want this country destroyed. We need a good intelligence agency, and I think that part should be moved over to the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is already doing it. The Office of Strategic Services, which was the CIA predecessor, they were under the DoD doing the DIA work. So we should take the covert operational part of it, move it over to the DIA, and then keep the parts of the CIA that Truman intended. For example, the Directorate of Intelligence. I was trained by them in analysis, and they're phenomenal. They take the intelligence, they plan what intelligence needs to be gathered, they analyze satellite data and provide amazingly accurate information to the president and policymakers. So those parts need to remain, and we need that part of intelligence. And then we do need a covert operational arm, but with restrictions which will be delineated to the Defense Intelligence Agency of what they can and cannot do, and then of course make it criminal penalties if they engage in covert operations without the president or Congress knowing it, or that involved human rights violations, or murder, etc.
It sounds like the whole theme of this administration is the fact that so many areas of government have grown way beyond what their original intention was. And people say if the founding fathers could see what was actually happening with all these agencies, they would just be turning over in their graves. And you've got Vivek and Elon going in there with the Department of Government Efficiency, but it sounds like what you're suggesting with the CIA is just another version of that. It's an agency that started off with a purpose. That purpose is now morphed and then grown to where that agency is now running the show and the tail is wagging the dog. And it's so powerful that it's very hard to even stop this growth from taking over the organism. I don't know if you call it a cancer. It seems like it's a theme across everything in government. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think many of us know the nature of government is if it's not held accountable and transparent to the people, government, especially secret government, will go wrong every single time. It's the nature of the beast. And that's how the CIA has been able to pull this off and do this. We have intelligence oversight committees, but they're compromised by the CIA too. They have to have a CIA clearance to be on the intelligence oversight committees. So the CIA controls their clearance. The CIA only provides them information that the CIA wants them to see, and more often than not, if not all the time, the congressmen and senators on the intelligence committees, they know that to deeply investigate the CIA would be the end of their career. They also focus mainly on getting reelected in domestic politics that will get them reelected, and the intelligence committees are the committees that meet the least of any other committee during the year. So they're essentially a sham. They're not going to do it. So we've got to depend on the current administration to go in and make some changes. And I think intelligence oversight needs to be taken away from the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the Senate Select Committee and put into an outside organization that is not compromised by the CIA or by the need to get votes and reelected. And I'll finalize that point with this. Senator Frank Church was the last senator to scrutinize the CIA. And you remember the Church committees and all the ugly things that came out of that, which were just the tip of the iceberg. The CIA contacted Church and said, if you keep this up, we're going to destroy you. Well, he was a very good, honest man. He had presidential ambitions, but he was an honest man. There's a book just published called The Last Honest Man, which people, I think, should read, and it's about Frank Church. Well, the CIA followed through on their promise, and they defamed and discredited Frank Church. And 3 of the witnesses that were going to testify to the Church committee were murdered before they could testify. And then Frank Church was maligned, and he lost his election, and that was the end of his political career. And it was over him. So on the select committees, these congressmen and senators know that if they dare expose anything that the CIA has been doing, it'll be the end of their political career as a congressman or a senator.
What makes you think Trump can pull it off, and what's the probability that he does it?
The great thing about Trump is, now he's sometimes like a bull in a china shop. He's certainly out of the ordinary, but the thing that is good about Trump is the reason that they hate him so much and have tried to do all of these Russiagate and all these other illegal operations. He cannot be controlled by them. And that's why he's the right man for the job, despite all of his failures and, blemishes. They cannot control him. That's why they've been trying so hard to stop him and remove him, because they know when he gets in there, they've got a whole procedure well developed on how to schmooze a presidential candidate, starting with their briefings before they get in office and then opening up only what they want the president to see and say, see, sir, this is why we do what we do. It's very important. And you need to back, and they'll buy the president that way, who's already busy, and usually will say to the CIA, like the last two administrations, okay, you just go do what you want, over to you on that one. Well, Trump is not going to do that. And that is why 42, again, the same 42 senior intelligence officers and the deputy director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, have again written a letter stating, and all of them signing, that Donald Trump is a threat to America and a threat to democracy. The same 42 that claimed, Hunter Biden's laptop was Russia disinformation when they knew darn well it wasn't. So there's those and so many other indicators will tell us that they are terrified of him because they cannot control him.
Are you worried about his safety, Donald Trump's safety?
Yes, and Bobby Kennedy too. Absolutely. I mean, they have got to have the best security ever, really, around both of them. They will try, based on the history of what I've seen in the CIA, they will try to get rid of them because the CIA knows it could be their demise. So they're under serious threat, and I think they know that. I know Bobby knows it. They know that. And so I think they're acting accordingly in putting in some really super security around them because, I think their lives are in danger.
Between so many things that Donald Trump wants to change or shut down and the Doge and everything, I mean, you're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars, and you're talking about, all these operations and all of this business as usual. It's just a mass that, doesn't want to die. It doesn't want to be disintegrated. And you don't have to believe in conspiracy theories to just know that something that's alive wants to stay alive, and it's going to fight to just stay relevant, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking a global juggernaut that is connected directly to Wall Street. It has been since its founding. And in the book, we talk about George Tenet's executive officer, Alvin Buzzy Krongard, who claimed that he came in just to be a patriot and only accept a dollar, I think, to do it, $1 a year, I think it was, or something like that, like he was a complete patriot. Well, we have a whole chapter on old Buzzy and some of the nefarious things he did. And as he claimed, this was his first interaction with the CIA, and George Tenet, it was his buddy, and asked him to come in. Turns out Buzzy Krongard's been connected to the CIA going back years and was just covering that up. So we are talking a monster here with multiple tentacles into Wall Street, the military-industrial complex, and what I call the secret industrial intelligence complex. And those are the CIA contractors, massive ones, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and all of those others, which way back then despised John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy Sr. and wanted them out too, because they were starting to scrutinize their corrupt practices. So you got all of that, this entire huge monster that's got to be dismantled. Probably nothing. The biggest and most important effort in our government and U.S. history.
It's just incredible. We get to watch this in real time, and the whole world is watching as well. There was definitely a lot of anxiety over here in Europe. I spent time in the Middle East. All eyes were on this election. I'm still pinching myself to make sure it actually happened when I wake up every morning.
Me too.
Kevin, you had said, quote, I make a distinction between the shadow government and the deep state, unquote. We're seeing these terms thrown around a lot lately. I was wondering if you could explain the difference between those two.
Certainly. The shadow government, I consider, is the CIA. And it is manipulating our elected government. And we talk about this in the book. It manipulates Congress, it manipulates the judiciary, and it manipulates the White House. So that is the shadow government actually controlling and manipulating our elected government. The deep state is this big monster, multi-billion dollar monster like the Department of State, for example, and all the connections to the military industrial complex companies, which are huge and massive. Their CEOs make 27.1 on average, $27.1 million a year. They're monsters. They have lobbyists that lobby Congress big time if those congressmen and senators want to get reelected. So that's the deep state. It is a big operational system designed to influence congressional and senator representatives, influence their reelection, and influence the rest of our government. Now, the two are joined at the hip. And this is just what I've seen from the inside. And I did work for both Department of State when I ran their anti-terrorism assistance program, police training. They are separate entities, primarily because of the CIA's unique control over government. But they're joined together and they work together and they interact, especially state and the CIA, basically like Siamese twins. So that's the deep state and the shadow government, and I consider them separate entities, but they're both connected, obviously, in doing the things that ultimately, like Ukraine, for example, Department of State was in there helping the CIA with a coup in Ukraine. Prime example, they do work together.
Let's talk about three global hotspots. You mentioned Ukraine. I'd love to talk about Iran and then what's going on in Israel and how you think the CIA has been involved and maybe how to solve some of those situations. Let's start with Ukraine. Can you talk about a brief history there and how the CIA was involved, and also what you think Trump should do?
Yeah, great question. From the very beginning, CIA Director John Brennan, who really was is a dark figure, CIA John Brennan was making secret trips into Ukraine to help organize and set up the coup. Now, then the Ukrainian government was democratically elected, and that's what the proponents of the war tend to leave out. And secondly, the United States government had signed an agreement with Russia, including NATO, that we would not place any NATO forces near their border, or any U.S. bases near their border. Well, we violated that behind their backs. John Brennan went in there to help set up the coup, and then the diabolical Department of State Victoria Nuland was in there working with George Soros NGOs to help the overthrow and the coup also, and put in place Zelensky as their candidate of choice. And that's how that went down. I think Trump is the person to stop that. And I think he's also the person to get all of them to a peace deal table. First, by taking Ukraine off of its aim and other countries' aim to put it into NATO. We made an agreement. We signed it with Russia. We need to go back to that agreement and assure them that we're not going to put NATO troops or forces or anything or Ukraine in NATO on their border. We have to do that. We never should have done that in the first place. That's what caused this mess. So I think Trump, knowing that, and plus his cabinet appointees knowing that, I think he can go in and negotiate between the two based on what I just told you. And some of the illegal things I think were done there that started a bloody war. And as I said on a recent interview, the CIA could care less about human life. They do not care about human life one bit. They want to take over Ukraine. They want their puppet government in Ukraine with Zelensky. And they don't care about the thousands and thousands of young men on both sides that have been killed in this bloody war. They could care less. They just want to rule. They just want to rule Ukraine. So that's all got to be reversed. And it's got to be reversed by going to the table with both Russia and Ukraine and making some demands from the U.S. on both sides, but especially to go back to that deal where we will not put NATO troops on Russia's border like we agreed to and signed to.
And of course, war is good for business. Is that always the default in the CIA? Like, we might as well, provide arms, instill conflicts, because this has been a big cash cow for so many different parties. Is that also something that's high on their interests?
Oh, it's priority number one. If you go back through the history of the CIA, over and over and over, the CIA has started a war to ingratiate the military-industrial complex. And if you look at each one, invariably, and they just came right out and admitted this about Ukraine, invariably it's about getting that country's oil, like Iran, or getting their minerals. And Lindsey Graham just came out. I don't know if he realized what he was saying, but he just came out and admitted, well, all this money we've spent in Ukraine, we're going to get back by getting their minerals. So he came right out and blew the covert operation. Yes, the CIA has been doing that since its inception over and over. It's the same thing. War, the military-industrial complex gets rich, and then we go in and we try to get the oil and the minerals. And if you go back and look at history of the CIA's operations and coups, it's been the same pattern over and over and over. And you would think reasonably that these people are fools, because these coups that they stage backfire and things wind up being worse than they were before. And they do it again, and then it backfires. Then they do it again, like Iraq, like Afghanistan. I mean, you could go on and on and on. They don't care about the consequences. They have one single demonic mission to overthrow that country and take their natural resources.
And I want to go back through history in just a second. Just a couple other current events as far as areas. Iran and then the Israel conflict. How has the CIA been involved in those things? And again, how could Trump put those things to rest or alleviate them?
Yeah, Iran is a mess. If you remember, Iran was a democratically elected government, and Iran had a lot of oil that the U.S. was just taking. And Iran decided, wait a minute, we're giving all this oil to the U.S. We want to nationalize this, and we want to make the profit for our people off our own oil. Well, they signed their death note there. CIA went in, staged a coup, got rid of the democratically elected government to get the oil back, put in the Shah, who was a tyrannical puppet, and the people knew it, who eventually got fed up with him, removed him, and then what do we get? The Khomeini regimes, and the number one chief state sponsor of terrorism in the world. So the CIA says, well, if you try to reform us, then you're going to hurt the terrorism effort in protecting America and the world. Excuse me, you started much of the terrorist cells. The CIA created Al-Qaeda and bin Laden. The CIA created ISIS. The CIA created the Free Syrian Army, which is an Islamic Revolutionary Army. The CIA has in the past worked directly with mob killers and mafia figures. So it is just so dirty, it's beyond imagination. And why is it dirty? It's because they do it all in secret, because they have that authority. Take that authority away. And the last part of our book, of course, is how transparency will kill the deep state. That transparency is removing the cloak of secrecy from the CIA and then opening up what they're doing to Congress and the American people.
Powerful, very powerful. If you look back in history, what would you say are the 3 to 4, most egregious abuses the CIA, did? Maybe it's the JFK assassination. I don't know. Maybe it's the Vietnam War. I don't know. What comes to mind for you that you would like to highlight to people about what the CIA has done? Certainly.
I think it's the Vietnam War. I don't know if your audience realizes this, but the Vietnam War was started by a U.S. false flag. The U.S. claimed that they started the war because on radar, they had Vietnamese ships heading towards this U.S. Naval vessel, and these Vietnamese boats were going to try to destroy this U.S. vessel. Well, it turns out that never happened, and the CIA doctored the radar and put those boats on there when there was no attack from Vietnam, and they started the war based on that, based on a lie, which is what they do best. The CIA and the military-industrial complex stood to make $1 trillion off that war alone, and it's one of the reasons that they despised JFK. They were going to lose a lot of money. And also what the CIA did, which is genocide, and I think it's a crime against humanity, is they started what's called the Phoenix operation, where they created these special assassination pistols, and they armed the Vietnamese who were friendly with the U.S. and some U.S. troops with these pistols, and they went into cities and to Vietnamese civilians who were only suspected that they may have ties to the Communist Party, just suspected, knock on their door, they'd open the door, and then they'd assassinate them. And a lot of times they assassinated the person and his wife and his children. The CIA killed 40,000 Vietnamese civilians that way. I think that's the biggest abomination of many, but that's the biggest abomination that the CIA has engaged in.
We always hear these rumors of the CIA being involved in the drug trade, and I don't know if it started there in Vietnam, but I've always heard these stories, and you talk about it a little bit in the group. Can you talk about the history of the CIA with drugs and then why they would do that?
Oh yeah, we got a whole chapter in Twilight of the Shadow Government on that. To get around Congress, especially doing covert operations that Congress would not approve. Ted Shackley is in our book, and he ran this whole operation. They created what you could call a private CIA, where they took millions and millions of drug money and ran it through Vietnam. And this also goes all the way up to the Iran-Contra, where they were running cocaine into the United States. But in this case, they took that drug money and they inserted it they were making money without Congress knowing it, because they had budget restrictions. So they created their own budget. And they were taking this cocaine and they were selling it in L.A. on the streets, especially in black areas, into bars and pubs and things like that, and making money off of that. That did happen, and we document that in the book. The CIA has been involved in drug running since its inception, and it has been billions of dollars. And that's how they funded a lot of these coups and a lot of these covert operations outside of their approved budget by Congress.
It's just incredible that happens. What else would be next on your list? Trump has said he will make public all of the documents surrounding the JFK assassination. First of all, do you think he will follow through on that? And second of all, what do you think specifically we'll learn?
Well, I hate to let everybody down, and I think Trump will do that. And I know Bobby Kennedy, because Bobby Kennedy's got the guts to do it, and that's what you need. But you got to understand that when the CIA did this operation, as they've done many before, like MK Ultra, prime example, as soon as the operation was done, they destroyed all the files. They didn't have this elaborate plan to kill JFK and then say, okay, now that it's done, let's make sure that we retain our records. No, they're gone. They'll never get those records. The 5,000 are probably innocuous stuff, kind of tandemly on the outside, but it's not the real thing. They were destroyed, and they're never going to be seen by anyone. MK Ultra is an excellent example of the torture mind control program. Just before the Church Commission, Richard Helms, the director of the CIA, destroyed 10,000 documents and videos involving MK Ultra before the Church Committee could get their hands on them. So these documents are destroyed.
Will we learn anything about that JFK assassination? And what do you think happened, or what do you know happened?
We are starting to, through some good investigative work. We do know now that the CIA, James Angleton, who was another dark figure, their head of counterintelligence, James Angleton had created what's called a 201 file on Lee Harvey Oswald. So he was a CIA asset well before Kennedy's assassination. And part of that program with the 201 file under Angleton was a program called ZR Rifle. And with ZR Rifle, Angleton was collecting the names of assets, double agents, and others that if they decided that they weren't playing by the rules or the goal of the CIA was after, they would go in and they would assassinate that person. And they had a 201 file on Oswald. And it's funny how things come out, because they found out Oswald was on the CIA payroll in Japan from the CIA station's accounting office, where the CIA forgot to look to destroy documents. And they have the payment receipts that the CIA paid to Oswald as a CIA asset. Jack Ruby was running guns to Cuba on a CIA gun running program with the mafia. So there are so many facts now that are coming out that indicate clearly that the CIA was involved in that in conjunction with the mafia, but the CIA ran the program. And the most, this stuff gets so ridiculous, but people believe it if they hear it enough. So Alan Dulles was the arch enemy of John F. Kennedy. Alan Dulles, the first CIA director. And he's the one that smuggled the Nazis in and falsified their files to President Truman. Dulles ran these Nazi SS scientists in, who, by the way, started NASA in our rocket program. He smuggled them into the United States illegally. And so from its inception, the CIA was already doing secret programs without the knowledge of the president. Well, JFK got fed up with that. He got fed up with not being told everything about the Bay of Pigs. And Kennedy was also trying to establish relations with Castro, and he had become relatively close to Khrushchev because neither one of them wanted annihilation through nuclear war. So, but the CIA wanted to depose Castro, nuclear war or not. They could care less. They just want to win, basically, their mission. So JFK said, that's when he said, I'm going to take the CIA and I'm going to splinter it into 1,000 pieces, because they'd gone behind his back and done this. And of course, that put a target on his back because of that. And Alan Dulles, the one who started it, the CIA director, guess who they put in charge of the Warren Commission? Alan Dulles. The CIA ran the Warren Commission, and they used the CIA secrecy agreement to threaten CIA employees that they couldn't talk about anything classified, or based on that secrecy agreement, they would go to prison. So nobody would testify from the CIA, and the ones that they let through were coached by Dulles to the Warren Commission. So the CIA had control of the entire thing.
It's fascinating. And then a few years later, there was a president called Nixon who had to leave the office because apparently, even though he was way ahead in the polls and had a seriously commanding lead, he was sending a couple of goofballs in to spy on the Democrats. Can you talk about what actually happened, and was the CIA involved there?
Yes. Oh, they certainly were. We have a chapter in the book on that. Nixon had to come out and said, Nixon had seen what the CIA had done, and he had come out and publicly said that he's thinking of doing something about the CIA, that it's doing things that are not illegal. That's the first thing. The second thing is Bob Woodward, the alleged greatest journalist of all time. We have a whole chapter on old Bob in our book, who claims that he was never involved in intelligence, and within 6 months, he joined the Washington Post, and within 6 months, he had the greatest sources and came out with the Watergate investigation, quote unquote. Well, it turns out Bob Woodward has been an intelligence officer going all the way back to Alexander Haig, and a joint effort to try to remove Nixon from office because he wasn't playing with the rules of the National Security Council and the intelligence community. So Haig and Woodward briefed regularly, and Woodward had a top secret clearance way back then. Now, he leaves all of that out of his bio. But in the book, we document every single source that proves that he was an intelligence officer going way back then. And I remember when I was a protective agent on the staff of Director William Casey, we would sit there, and we were responsible for letting whoever was proper in to see the director. And it was a very specific process. And Bob Woodward was visiting William Casey all the time. And William Casey hated the press. I mean, he despised the press, except for Bob Woodward, who he met with regularly. And we're all shaking our heads like, what's this deal with him and Woodward, for goodness sake? Well, now we know Woodward was intelligence, and Casey knew it. And it's funny, too, because some of the book veil is false, and I can talk about that. But Bill Casey gave Woodward some specific classified information he wanted him to put in his book Veil, that he wanted to get out in a propaganda fashion to the American people. So there is some classified stuff from William Casey in there. However, Woodward claims that he got into Georgetown University Hospital when Bill Casey was on his deathbed from terminal brain cancer, which did indeed happen. I was there. I saw the tumor and the CTs and everything. So they didn't whisk him off to some island secretly, as some people have said. But Woodward claims in the book Veil, Secret Wars of the CIA, that he was able to get into Casey's hotel room, and Casey admitted his role in Iran-Contra. Complete fabrication. What Woodward didn't bank on was me coming out having my cover rolled back. Being a whistleblower and being able to talk about this stuff, Bob Woodward tried to get in to see Casey, but we caught him and gracefully showed him the exit, and he never came back. Not only that, the tumor had affected the part of his brain that controls speech, and he couldn't even talk. It is a complete fabrication in his book, and there are...
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
Most people will never see this opportunity. Dubai luxury transformation projects have historically delivered 40 to 90% annual returns. That is incredible. These were once reserved only for insiders with access. I spent 15 years on Wall Street and I learned this: the biggest returns always go to the people who get the call first. Now, you finally can. We've just received a brand new project with major upside potential. Allocations move fast. Click the link, apply now, and speak to my team. This is your chance to see what others never will.